Hey everybody, welcome. Nice to see you here today. Thanks for joining us today with Plan. We have a great agenda lined up for you. So before we dive into it, my name is Laura Bolio. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Plan. I am joined by the incredible Debbie Taylor and Jeff Schultheis. So Debbie is the Managing Partner and Chief Tax Strategist at Carson Wealth. In addition to managing her own wealth management practice in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey, she is also a very highly sought after speaker, which we know Debbie, we love Debbie. We call her Queen Debbie here at Plan. And then Greg is a senior wealth planner at Carson Wealth. And so today we have a big topic that's really, I think, on the minds of everybody with a 401k. So we're talking today about strategies to keep clients grounded in market volatility. As you well know, uncertainty breeds anxiety, and silence from your advisor can often amplify a client's worst fears. So we're going to be diving into all sorts of strategies to accommodate for that. All right. Quick housekeeping. Yes, this webinar will be recorded. If you have any questions, please drop them into the Q&A and we will answer them as we go. If we have a question that we don't get to by the end of the webinar, we will include the answer in a follow-up email. So keep an eye out for that. Please feel free to participate. We love your participations. We love to engage with the audience. And Debbie, Greg, I hand it off to you.
That's awesome. So thank you so much, Laura, and it's great to be here. So with everything going on in the markets and in your clients' lives, we decided to pull in an extra section today about how to address volatility. And this is one of 3 presentations that I'm actually doing today. I did a podcast earlier on talking about volatility, and there were several thousand people on that. Then we've got Plan, and then we have something after this, also talking about Plan and volatility. And so we've got a lot of content today, and we're going to cover a lot of ground. So hopefully everybody walks away feeling really excited. So Greg, let's hop in. And the first thing we're going to talk about then, and so just so you know, today is going to be split up into sort of 2 different sections, right? So one of it is talking about the market volatility and some of the strategies to be using with market volatility. And then the other part is the tax report that Plan has and how to customize that for your client, because they are starting to get tax returns back, and you want a process in place to analyze the tax returns and get the tax report back to your client. And so today is really then a mix of, hey, some practice management and how taxes play into that, but then also Plan. So here's what we're talking about today, just like I mentioned. And then let's hop on the next slide. I would be remiss if I did not congratulate Laura and the rest of the Plan team, because the Bob Berry study just came out, and Plan is number 1. Numero uno, right? We're number 1, right? We're number 1. And so if you look at this, these numbers are absolutely staggering. Plan with 41% market share, going up from 31% last year. So huge jump. Average rating of 9.01, which is literally one of the highest throughout the entire survey of every software they have. Okay. The fact that Plan breaks into the 9s is huge, hugely impactful. And I think there are only a few others that could get to that level, because that's how big of a deal it is. And so anyway, we just want you to see that, adopting this software is absolutely the right choice. You see your competitors are also hopping on the Plan bandwagon by huge numbers. And again, with that average customer rating, that's their client support. That's these monthly webinars that we do for future subscribers, and then walled content. We do monthly webinars for existing subscribers, right? So there's a huge library with all kinds of practice management, tax planning, Plan updates. The content, the education is literally second to none. And now you don't need to take my word for it, because that's why they have a 9.01 rating, which is, again, the fact that anyone breaks 9 is a really huge deal. And Bob Veeries and the folks behind the study actually acknowledge that in the introductory comment. So let's hop in. Congratulations to Plan. If I could do, are we able to do reactions here, like little balloons flying up or whatever, right? Sometimes they're like reactions, like things will come up when you're on Zoom, but none of it's working. All right. communications with clients during market volatility. And so there's three things here that we want to think about. First of all, timing is everything. We don't want to be reactive here. We want to get out in front of this. And your clients are worrying about this stuff, even if you're not, right? Because they don't have the context that you have. They don't have the history. They're not looking at this data. They're not reading 3 different newspapers a day, right? And so things that might only mildly worry you could greatly worry them. And so if you're going to err, you want to err on the side of getting ahead of things, right? We want processes around everything. You know that. And then what are 9 strategies for volatile times? So the first thing is everything starts with the service calendar. And so here's our service calendar. We've talked about this a bunch. I think we covered this in the January webinar. And when you become a Holistiplan subscriber, we go into this calendar in great depth. And the whole point of the calendar here then is to remind you that there is a foundation here, right? Like there is a foundation of services that you're providing to your clients throughout the year, that many of them are tax planning related or driven by taxes. And so just as a starting point, before we start talking about departing from the calendar and becoming ad hoc and improvising and pivoting, right, is what are we pivoting from? Well, here's how we start every day. Here's how we start every month, every season of the year. This is how we're thinking. This is our baseline, so to speak, right? Okay. So then the next thing we want to be talking about is our processes. And the service calendar, feeds into the processes. And so again, if we're going to do something more than once, we want a process around it. So we have a checklist. We have a process around everything. Literally, I'm going on vacation in a week and a half. That's right. I'm very excited to go on our vacation. I'm taking the entire family. It's very hard to get them all together in the same place. And we have a process around going on vacations in the office. I have literally a checklist around that. So if you're going to do something more than once, you need a checklist around that. And so everything on the service calendar has a process around it, right? So now the next step is, what is our process around market volatility? Well, guess what? We have an action plan around that. That is in Salesforce that gets triggered. And so here's a copy of our action plan. And it's not to say that every single thing has to happen every time there's volatility, right? But what I'm saying is when the market drops, 5 to 10%, particularly when it's the first 10% drop since 2022. So remember, you can't just look at the data and say, oh, Debbie, the average intra-year decline is 14.5%, right? What are we getting all worked up about? Well, everything's got to be in context. We've basically had no volatility for the last 2 years. We've had a market that's been up 25% in each of the last 2 years with basically no volatility. So now that the Nasdaq's down 10%, small caps down 10%, S&P 500 down 5 or 6%, this is the first real volatility that some of your clients have felt in about 2.5 years. So no, is it 14.5% intra-year decline? No, it's not. But you've got to look at things in context. And then also within context is a new president, a new administration, a new way of doing things, right? And a market that's fully valued. So people are nervous. They've made a lot of money the last 2 years. They don't want to blow it. And they've got a president and they've got folks in Washington that are trying out very new and very unorthodox approaches to governing, right? To say the least. So, when you look at everything within context, it's not just a chart, right? Oh, Debbie, we're supposed to have 10% declines at least once a year. We're supposed to have 5% declines at least 2 to 3 times a year. I know that. I see this data. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about empathy. I'm talking about your clients. I'm talking about how they feel and the lens that they view it through. And that is then what is prompting some of this action. And so you see here then on our down market action plan, and Greg it works on this in my office along with Caroline. So Greg, why don't you mention like a few of the things that we decided to do and some of the things that we decided to hold off on because the market isn't down, 15 or 20%, and the S&P 500 isn't down 10% yet. So why don't you mention some of the things that we're going to talk about those. Why don't you mention things that we didn't do? How about that? What are 2 things that we didn't do?
That works. Yeah, we're going to address a couple of these in more detail, but like Debbie said, not everything necessarily needs to be, we have an order here, but not, this does not, it's not required to go through this order. It's really just a matter of sitting down with the team, deciding, what would be appropriate right now. So, for example, one thing that we haven't quite gotten to, but we're close to, we do use riskalyze nitrogen to assess our clients' risk tolerance. So, we're sort of approaching that time where we're starting to have the conversation. Hey, maybe now is a good time, now that we're sort of in this period of downward trajectory. Let's send out a mass communication to our clients, offer them the opportunity to give us their feedback, how they're feeling. Like Debbie said, it's been a couple of years. It's always good to get feedback when those feelings are fresh in mind. So that's something that we're considering but haven't quite taken to yet. Tax loss trading, we do that on an individual basis, and we're sort of weighing a sort of all-encompassing, let's take a look at the entire portfolio and make some real decisions, discuss with clients, maybe positions that, particularly on the tech side, maybe there were tech positions that they were holding on to because they were just so highly appreciated. Well, maybe now we can sell them for a much smaller gain. So these are the kinds of things that we're coming to, that we're starting to think about. But I would say almost all of these tasks, with the exception of 2 or 3, we've actually taken action on in the past 3 weeks.
Yeah, we didn't do the riskalyze/nitrogen outreach.
Right.
And what else did we not do?
You know what? That's really the primary one. Like I said, we are doing some tax loss trading, but we haven't quite undergone a full scale, let's look under every single rock.
Loss trading, it's because we're doing it all along, right?
Right, exactly. That's the other thing too.
Right. I mean, we've been doing tax loss trading, so there's not a lot of tax loss trading opportunities. Like we did look at that, right?
Exactly.
So looking at this, what I would tell you is what we haven't done yet is the riskalyze outreach. We are keeping that in our back pockets for if/when the market goes down even more. And then phone calls. And I don't see phone calls on here, but individual calls out to the clients. We didn't do that. We haven't done that either. Other than that, I feel like we pretty much did just about everything else on the list. So with that, then let's hop in. And by the way, again, the reason that we did cover so much on the list was not so much the S&P 500 is down 5% and the NASDAQ down 10%, right? But more with the context is that clients are so out of practice on this that we wanted to reach out. Okay, so again, within context, that is why. All right, so what did we do? So first of all, we sent out this announcement, 9 key strategies for when the market pulls back. And we're going to go through these in a little bit more detail. So don't worry about trying to write all these down. But this is the announcement that actually went out to our clients a little bit over a week ago. What else did we do? We hosted a webinar. And how we pitched the webinar, and this is like a new thing that I'm doing now, is we pitched a 20-minute webinar, okay? And what I feel like is people are so Zoom fatigued and so busy with their lives that if we're like, oh, sit on a 1-hour webinar, people are like, I just don't have the time for that, right? So my new thing is pitching 20-minute webinars. And then if they wanted to follow up or have additional questions, we had a way to approach that. And what we did is we said, we stayed on 20 minutes. Literally, we were off like within 20 to 25 minutes. But then we had that email, which is to the right here. And the email went out within an hour of the webinar being over. And the email was like, hey, thanks for attending our 20-minute webinar. We're happy to answer your questions. So if you have additional questions, please click on our Calendly link below, and you could set up an appointment to talk with us next week in the office. And so far, we've had a few clients take advantage of that, which is fine. So here's the thing. Instead of doing a 1-hour webinar and people then not signing up because it feels so overwhelming and it conflicts with their schedule because it's sort of last minute, right? Is we did a 25-minute webinar, right? Covered the ground we needed to cover, and then sent out the email and said, hey, if you want to talk further, then click on this link below and we can set up a talk for next week. And we're thrilled with how this went. We had about 30 people sign up for this, which, by the way, might not sound like a lot, but remember that we have about 100 families that we manage wealth for that are like heavily engaged. And we have about 200 overall, if you count literally every single family, every single client, that includes kids, all that. So if you think about it, to have 30 signups of about 100 families is, I mean, that's a great number, right? That's a great number. But that's how we handled it. And then if you go to the next slide, this is the one thing we kept in our back pocket, is the reaching out, reassessing client risk tolerance, right? But what this is that nitrogen/riskalyze outreach. And I love this. It is 2 questions. It's super simple. You've heard me talk about it before. Again, it's through nitrogen. And this we're keeping in our back pockets for when there's a real problem. This is like our nuclear option, basically, okay? Because we didn't want to hit them with everything all at one time. So just think about it then. In the last week and a half, we sent out the 9 strategies announcement that I just showed you. We had a webinar, and we sent an email to all of our clients after the webinar, offering for them to sign up with the link to talk with us, because that email went out to the people who sat on the webinar, but it also went out to people who did not sit on the webinar. So that, just to be clear, that email went out to everybody. We had 2 different versions. And then internally, we did do tax loss trading, and we did a lot of Roth conversions last week. So internally, we also addressed a lot of things. Anything else on here, Greg, that you want to mention?
No, I don't think so. Just, it was a great webinar. I would just, again, stressing like the importance of active communication. It's easy to sort of hide away, it's just tell your clients, we're weathering the storm, but taking every opportunity to outreach to to set up outreach to clients. That's why I think it's great. Over the course of the past few weeks, we've had at least one outreach a week, maybe even 2. And just being top of mind for them, to let them know what the status is, what our thoughts are. Just being proactive in that way, I think, goes a long way with clients.
Yeah, that's great. And again, getting ahead of it. By the way, one of the main reasons that people fire their financial advisor is not necessarily investment returns, but it's a lack of communication and a lack of being proactive. Right? So that's what we're talking about here. All right, let's hop into the 9 key planning strategies. Right? So here we have, so the first thing is using the information from the client's tax return as the basis for the conversation on the planning strategies. So it's hard to talk about a planning strategy if you don't know what a client's situation is, right? If you don't know what their tax bracket is, then maybe recommending a Roth conversion may or may not make sense, right? And so knowing what you're coming from, if they have additional cash and you're like, hey, the market's down, this is a great time to hop in. And so how do you know that they have additional cash? Because you look at their Schedule B and you see all their interest income. So a lot of this is within the context of tax planning, which is what I was talking about before, even with the service calendar, is I believe all roads lead from and to tax planning, right? Good. So let's hop into the strategies then. So number 1, right, is let's get our retirement plan contributions in place. And remember, this is not just the IRA, but this is possibly doing a backdoor. This is also doing your retirement plan contributions, particularly if you're self-employed, and maybe you'd wait to the end of the year or even early next year to do it if you're self-employed. Maybe you take that opportunity and do some of it now. And remember, if you're like, hey, Debbie, how do I know the market's hit a bottom? We're probably going to go down more. I agree with you. I'm not necessarily saying we've hit a bottom. But what I am saying is this could be an opportunity. So maybe we nibble, is what I say. Maybe we do some nibbling if it's a bigger dollar amount, right? So that's number 1. Number 2, Roth conversions. Why don't you mention a little bit about Roth conversions, because you were leading that charge over the last 2 weeks.
Sure. Yeah, we've been discussing with a lot of clients. Let's say we called, about 25% of our book, and just to discuss, what we've set up earlier in the year, which is really a preliminary look at like, okay, we expect that, given your desire to do Roth conversions, our analysis, we expect that we would we're going to recommend a range between, whatever, 175 and $200,000 of total Roth conversion. Well, given that the market has pulled back, now could be a great opportunity to start, like Debbie says, nibbling at that amount. Maybe that's $75,000 of conversion. Maybe that's $100,000 of conversion. And we've had a lot, I would say about 80% of people that we reach out to are totally on board. They say, you know what, go forward with it. That's great. We're going to revisit the analysis later in the year. We'll discuss specific amounts for total Roth conversion later in the year. But for now, let's take advantage of this down market while we have it. Let's convert some of those tech positions, other positions that are, a little depressed right now, hoping to get that growth back on the Roth side.
Yeah. So we had two questions just to back up about why didn't we send out the Riskalyze questionnaire? And it's only because I just wanted to keep something in my back pocket so when the market goes down even more. And we did a decent amount of outreach this time. And also, it's not just outreach, but it's also pulling information back. So our outreach was the 9 key strategies, right? That was a new piece. Outreach was the webinar. And then outreach was the email from the webinar saying, hey, if you're interested in talking to us, click this Calendly link, right? And that was trying to get the information back, right? The Riskalyze, I wanted to wait for the market to go down even more, because then at that point, yes, you're doing outreach, but now you're pulling in information. And I wanted to wait for the market to go down more before I started polling everybody to see who's absolutely panicked. And so it was actually my way of acknowledging that what's happened just now is modest. But again, I felt within the context I should be reaching out. But I'm holding off on the Riskalyze nitrogen before the market really goes down 10, 15%. I'm talking about the S&P 500. And clients are legitimately starting to feel nervous. That's when Riskalyze will go out. We also had somebody who wanted a copy of the email, Greg, but that is in the deck. And the deck goes out with goes out to everybody. So just hang tight on that, and you will get that. All right, tighten your cash flow, and so this goes along with the next piece, the next item, which is tighten your cash flow and consider delaying retirement. And that's on the next slide there. And so this is having conversations with clients about retiring into a bear market or just trying to slow down that big trip to Europe. Maybe we put that off a little bit, or maybe retiring when the market's volatile or possibly down. Not so great sequence of return risk, right? So that's that part of the conversation. And then investing idle cash, right? So that's the Schedule B. That's the wallet share project that we have talked about in previous webinars. Holisticland does an amazing job of helping us to see clients that are sitting on additional cash, waiting for entry points in the market, right? How many of us have heard that? And so now this is the opportunity to go back to those clients who are like, hey, I was just waiting for a good time to come into the market. And we're like, well, here's your time, right? NASDAQ down 10%, small cap down 10%. Here's your time. Rebalancing. So Greg mentioned about rebalancing. Key sectors for loss harvesting. That's item 7. And we just mentioned that we are constantly loss harvesting. And we looked at that last week. And then getting more aggressive. So that's not just taking cash off the sideline, but that's some of the fixed income your clients might have. Maybe it's time to, again, nibble into the equities. And then gifting and estate planning. And that could be doing our annual gifts, transferring into certain trusts, setting up GRATs, because LLCs, because the best time to transfer assets into most trusts is when the asset is depressed, right? It uses up less of your annual exclusion and less of your lifetime exclusion. So when the value of your assets goes down, this is when you should get your business appraised. This is when you should be funding those trusts and doing some of those gifts and things like that. And so that was the point of item 9. Good. All right, Greg, back to you then.
Excellent.
Yeah. So
yeah. I was just going to, just to follow up on our list here. What we wanted to do is just put a couple of case studies together, situations, where you might use some of the tools in Holistiplan to, to drive these conversations, provide some context to clients, some graphs. Some of these charts and tools are really powerful and they go a long way. So with that, I will jump into our demo environment. and we'll take a look at some of these. So our first case study is really just around Roth conversions. So we took a look at this tool in an earlier session earlier this year, but just as long as everyone can see my screen, we'll take a look at a couple of enhancements that have actually been added to the tool. So what I'm going to do is I'll jump into my client here from my dashboard, and we've already created a Roth projection analysis, but we'll take a quick look. And this is, again, a great way to just show clients the value of Roth conversions over the course of their life. So again, we're not going to go too in depth into how we actually create this analysis, but just to show you, this is where we enter the information for our analysis, taxable assets of the client, our actual Roth conversion plan, some of the general assumptions that we have, spending goals, Medicare assumptions, other income assumptions. And what's produced here is a really powerful graph, a report rather, that just drives home, what a difference Roth conversions can make for any individual. So we have our Roth projection total lifetime tax. So this just shows the value of those Roth conversions. It's going to save them over $2 million in taxes over the course of their life. So, if there's a European vacation with the family, lots of things on the menu. How can you spend $2 million? So great graph to show clients. IRMA surcharges, another one that's, a great addition, just showing them, particularly clients. I literally just spoke with a client this morning who was talking about how Roth conversions have added additional IRMA surcharge. So, it's a little painful in the moment, but again, a great way to show the value of the Roth conversions earlier compared with, with the base case. So we do have our portfolio value. This is just how the actual portfolio grows over time, given the Roth conversions. So it just shows that additional value in your portfolio. And this is just another way to visualize that. But what I do want to highlight here is this is literally something we asked for maybe 6 weeks ago, and it was here maybe 3 weeks ago. So this is a brand new chart that's been added to the report. This shows the makeup of the portfolio as well by asset type. So just as important as portfolio growth is the actual makeup of the portfolio. So, if we were in a situation, obviously we want a larger portfolio, but, what is that portfolio actually made of? Well, in this case, now we can see the Roth assets and how it makes up the portfolio over time. So great addition by the team. They put this together so quickly, and we think a great addition. So use this for when you're having those Roth conversion conversations. Some clients are more comfortable with it. Maybe they don't require as much analysis, but for, maybe for some of those newer clients who have never done Roth conversions or are really getting exposed to the concept for the first time, they're asking themselves, why am I paying taxes now? Why don't I wait until later in life when I have RMDs? Well, this is a great way to address those and adds a lot of value. All right. With that, I will jump to our sort of second case study, and this is going to be excess cash flows. This is something that we've addressed in some of our strategies, for whatever reason. So I'll jump back to my dashboard here and back into my client. So, there's a variety of reasons. Maybe clients have cash sitting on the side that they might not necessarily be planning anything for. Maybe they're looking for a market entry point. So now's a great opportunity, to invest those assets. Another tool that HolistaPlan has, and I've gone through the process of creating this report, is called the cash flows report. So this could be a great way, particularly for those clients who are maybe RMD age. One thing that we've been discussing with a lot of our clients is that 2023, 2024 have really increased the value of their retirement accounts. And as a result, they might have an RMD that's 20% higher than it was last year. So if their expenses haven't really changed that much, perhaps there's going to be, some excess cash coming out of their retirement accounts. So this is a great tool, allows you to enter all of the income items that the particular client might have. So in this case, we've got 150 from Peter and 50,000 from Paula. And it just shows the flow of assets, what's coming in, what's going out with all of their various expenses. And we have unallocated income. So again, great opportunity to discuss with clients and say, you know what, you have probably 66,000 additional dollars coming out of your retirement accounts that you don't necessarily need. Okay, some of that's going to go to taxes, but maybe there's $50,000 left over. Let's discuss putting that back into the portfolio. Or if there's a large expense coming up, just being on top of that and having these conversations with clients can go a long way. So this is a great tool. There's a presentation mode. So if you want to, edit this on the fly, you can have that conversation with a client. This is a great way to, to drive this conversation. And finally, what we're going to do is take a look at some loss realization. So Holistiplan is great at this. Allows you to so quickly and easily just create scenarios for your clients. So as these opportunities may be coming into play, what I'll do is jump into our scenario analysis. So this is built on the 2023 tax return, but as the 2024 tax returns come around, we'll be reanalyzing all of those, and we'll be updating all of our analysis. But what I have here is a couple of different cases. So I have a base case that I've built here. Maybe this individual still is working. And what I wanted to just show, and this lends to some other more in-depth strategies just about optimizing your gains and losses. But for whatever maybe the client took a distribution from their portfolio, maybe they sold a position that they didn't want to hold anymore. They have a $30,000 short-term capital gain. Well, with Holistiplan, we create a new scenario. We mirror the base case, and let's start seeing what we can do in terms of realizing some losses. So this is a great opportunity here. Perhaps again, they have a $30,000 short-term gain. Let's get very efficient with it. Let's take a long-term loss, and ultimately that's going to net out to zero, net zero capital gains. So again, just using this scenario analysis to drive home the point. Okay, that $30,000 loss, that's going to save you, $6,000 on the federal side, a couple $1,000s on the state side. And these reports can be printed, can be sent to clients. We use these for, I would say, 90% of the conversations we have with clients in terms of strategies. And so absolutely, just to address some specific instances where we can be using the tools of Holistiplan to address many of these strategies that we've just outlined.
Yeah, so the point here, right, taking a step back, is we wanted to demonstrate this because in this market, some of your clients might have tax losses that you can trade. And by trading those tax losses, you could save a client thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so what's really cool about Holistiplan is that you can then demonstrate it to the client. Hey, we did tax loss trading when the market was down in March, and we ended up saving you, $12,000 on your taxes. And so you can talk with them about it now, or you can talk about it with them at the end of the year or in your review. But what Holistiplan is really cool about is helping us to demonstrate all the money that we're making for our clients, justifying our fee, cementing that relationship, all of that. So we decided to show this loss realization analysis now because the market's down, and this could be a cool way for you to show clients over the next several months how you were very proactive for them. All right. Customizing the tax report. So why are we talking about this now, right? Is we're talking about this because your clients are starting to get their tax returns back and they're starting to send them off to you. And so step one of the tax report, right, is setting the stage. Then we want to prepare our analysis. We have always a client communication because you want clients to know all the amazing work you're doing. And then there's some cleanup at the end, reviewing, finalizing, following up, and things like that. And so with that then, let's hop in. The first thing is setting the stage. So going into the software, right? And some of you might not even know what the tax report is, right? Because these are future subscribers. But the tax report is Holistiplan's state-of-the-art way of summarizing the tax return, right? So you get the tax return, you upload it. It literally takes like 20 seconds. There's no effort. An intern could do it at your office. Your 10-year-old kid could do it, right? And then you get the tax report. And the tax report is the first step for you to do all this analysis, all this planning, all this great stuff, right? It's literally the first step, and you should be doing it for every single client you have, right? Every client you have, you should be doing this. And so with that, Greg, then back to you on this.
Absolutely. Thanks, Debbie. So let's take a look quick, and I'll jump back into our demo environment. And we'll take a look at really just what this report actually is, because it's pretty unique in that it's very customizable, and it can help in a lot of ways. So what I'll do from the start here is just sort of show you how we track, the returns that we're actually receiving. So as Debbie said, this is a pretty universal tool that we use for almost everyone. So we'll jump into our tax return staging screen. And this is, one way of tracking, okay, who are we waiting on tax returns from? Who have we returned? Perhaps people are on extension. It's great. There's a review status here. So, perhaps if the client extended, we'll change that selection there. That way we know we don't have to reach out to them, follow up with them. We can, put that off until later in the year. But perhaps one is in review. Another great way to use this tool, this is the staging screen. You can create custom upload links. So just clicking this button here, you can copy the link and you can paste this right into an email to a client. So when they receive that, they click the link, they can upload the return. Better yet, it goes right to Holistiplan. Holistiplan immediately starts analyzing it. So cuts down on some of the, in some of the internal actions that need to be taken by a team. So this is just a great way to keep track of who's given you tax returns, who you're still waiting on, who is complete, and just helps along that whole process. But what I do want to do is just show you, how we get this report. So let's say, brand new client, they gave us their tax return. Let's upload their return. We select the year that it's going to be, and then you would select a household, or you could add a new household. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So we would add the client's name. And then basically, once we've had all of that, we upload the return itself. And you'll see a little icon pop up in the corner here that shows that Holistiplan is thinking. And Holistiplan thinks very quickly. And what is generated in literally seconds is a tax report. So we'll jump into Peter and Paula Professor. This would be their 2023 tax return. And let's take a look at their tax report. So this is the tax report. As you may have seen in previous sessions that we've had, this is really just an all-encompassing review of their tax return. So it's going to include just about every major aspect of the return is going to get some sort of summary on this report. So these are our key figures, taxable income, marginal bracket, average rate. If they have any carry forward losses, those are going to populate here. And again, this is all done automatically by the software. It's not like anyone's coming in here and entering these numbers manually. It's all done by the software. So this can actually be edited in pretty unique ways. So manage sections, I'll click that, and I can hide and show any section that comes through here. Now, if there isn't something in the tax return that would, for instance, require Medicare Part B and D premiums to be populated, then that'll just automatically, sort of just go into the background. That won't populate. But any of these reports can be added and subtracted from our, from our tax report. So a lot of times when we're dealing with clients and, when we're getting their tax return every year, what we like to do is send them a pretty all-encompassing tax report. So it's going to include almost everything that's available, because we want them to see, very, very much every aspect of their return. And we also send them an email as well that just that it complements the tax report and just summarizes other aspects as well. Perhaps there's Roth conversions that we're discussing with them for the current year, so that wouldn't necessarily flow through the tax report from 2024. So that's how we tend to handle our annual tax report that we send out to clients.
Yeah, I will hop in there.
Go ahead,
So,
Debbie.
Holistiplan has updated the tax report over the last, I don't know, time flies. So this is really cool aspects of the tax report. So just to highlight, right? So this tax breakdown, this little pie chart, super reader friendly for when you send this to your clients. So that was a really nice addition. And then scrolling down a little bit to the right, you see there the ordinary income and the taxable income there, right? So, really helpful like bar charts to help explain like that we have a progressive tax system, for example, right? And it's like marginal tax brackets. So not every dollar is taxed at 24%. Clients forget that. And then if you scroll down a little bit here, and again, you see then the long-term capital gains rates and how that works, right? So this is really cool. They've made it a lot more reader friendly. And so I believe that every one of your clients should be getting this report, right? And it is like zero effort on your part. Like I said, when we first started, I had my intern running all these reports, and now he's been with me for 6 years. But I had an intern doing this. So there's like no excuse. And again, the whole point of this tax software is that you can do this for all of your clients now, or like all of your A, B, and C clients or whatever. I mean, if you have 1,000 clients, that might be a lot, but you get my point. Is like everybody should have some way of understanding their tax picture. And unfortunately, the tax preparers are not doing this, right? They're not reviewing tax returns with their clients. They're not even meeting with them anymore. And so this is a huge void that you can drive a Mack truck through, that you can fill, that you can show value, that you can differentiate yourself. And it starts with getting the tax return and then running this tax report and getting this tax report out to the clients, and then offering to have a phone call about it and to discuss it with them. And so those are some thoughts on this. Real quick, though, we have some questions in the chat that I wanted to address. So we had Rob asking, what planning software do you use? Why would you enter expenses here and not in your planning software? And so we use eMoney. We use eMoney, but you would enter expenses here when you're using like the Roth conversion tool. That would make sense because the eMoney and Money Guide Pro are really accumulation focused. And if you are looking at distribution planning and how to draw down the assets, how to do Roth conversions, things like that, then that's when you're going to get into a Holistiplan or some of the distribution planning software. And then I had somebody, an anonymous, mention this must be an add-on because I don't see it. And so I just want somebody to acknowledge that. I know that there were times, I'm part of Carson, it's a large RIA, and I remember sitting on some of these webinars and certain features were not available because I'd find out that Carson hadn't turned it on for whatever reason. So sometimes that does happen. So these features are real, they should be available. And so if not, then you got to go back to your RIA and say, hey, I know there are these features of Holistiplan, and why haven't you turned them on? All right, back to you, Greg. We got about 15 minutes.
Absolutely. Thanks, Debbie. So yeah, I laid out a case study here, and it's really just to show, how we might use the tax report to communicate with clients, because, ultimately what we want to do is make sure that they're seeing the information that's most applicable to what it is that we're discussing with them. So, while we love the full tax report, we use it all the time for clients, maybe we want to have a more targeted outreach or more targeted discussion with the client. So this client has $150,000 of carry forward losses. They've recently retired, so they're hitting a little bit of an income valley. They're going to be in a lower bracket than they had been while they were working. And they were planning on a home renovation. They set aside about $300,000 in a savings account. But they decided, you know what, we're not going to renovate, we're going to buy a different place instead. So that $300,000, isn't necessarily going toward a home renovation anymore. So what I'm going to do is just jump back into our Holistiplan software, and we'll take a look at how we might customize this tax report to more specifically address the specific things that they're looking to, that we're looking to discuss with them. So, like I said before, any of these sections can be added, can be changed, can be removed. So perhaps, they're going to be in a lower tax bracket next year. So let's make sure that we have our ordinary income bracket. Let's take a look at that. Let's make sure that we address that with the client so we can speak specifically to that. We know that they have some carry forward losses, so we're going to keep all of our Schedule D here. We know that they have some the savings account, so it's been sitting in an account. It's probably been earning interest. It's going to show up on their Schedule B report, so we'll keep our Schedule B. But then what I'm going to do is I'll go through and hide the rest of these sections. Again, this is really just to highlight exactly what it is that you want to discuss with the client. So we'll leave these here. And once we reload our page here, what we've produced is just a more consolidated version of the tax report. It includes our key figures. It includes the breakdown of the tax. This is our ordinary income. So again, this is a great way to, to reach out to clients, include this in an email, attach it to an email, use it in a meeting, and like Debbie said, talk them through where, what tax bracket are you in? What tax bracket are you likely to be in? This is why we're recommending, for instance, let's say, a $50,000 Roth conversion. Great way to show them, that's what remains in the 22% tax bracket. So it's very visual. It really helps drive home the point. Explain, give rationale for why you're actually recommending the things that you're recommending. So here's our Roth conversion, backup. This is how we're going to discuss with the client how to maximize those lower bracket years, those lower tax years. One thing I'll point out too is that any of these specific reports can even just be downloaded individually. So you could paste this right into the body of an email. It'll look great. And it again just helps drive home the point for clients, helps give them visual representation of what it is you're discussing or outlining in an email. So we'll include our long-term capital gains because this client has carry forward losses. They're going to have $150,000 carry forward losses. So let's include the capital gains, and let's start discussing how we can potentially realize gains in the portfolio. Just to use up those losses. So this is just an example, but this is definitely a way that you could go about using all of these various sections. Our Schedule B report here, this is likely to include, like I said, that $300,000 savings account that's been earning interest. Great. It was for the home renovation. Client is moving. Great way to start that conversation and just discuss, what it's earning while it's sitting in a savings account. It's been a great couple of years of higher interest, so it's been earning quite a bit. But you know what? 5% is great, but last year the market returned 20%. Now we're in a down market, so would be a great opportunity to put that money to work. Not only that, Schedule B, this is a great report that, like Debbie said, we use for our wallet share. So if clients have outside assets that we don't recognize, or there's an account at their local bank, a savings account that's generating interest income. Great way to identify that, start that conversation, bring those assets to their attention, and discuss what they could be doing as an alternative to keeping that asset, those monies sitting in cash and just earning interest. So.
To be clear, like this Schedule B analysis alone is worth the price of a Holista plan. Like
Yeah.
any one of these features alone is worth the price, is worth rolling up your sleeves, because you could pull in millions of dollars in assets just by knowing that your clients are sitting on this cash, which, by the way, for the first time in years, they're doing it because cash was earning 4 or 5%. You haven't had to worry about that for almost 15 years. That cash was actually a competition for you. But for some of these more conservative clients, cash is now to them a decent alternative. And so you need to be worrying about that and proactive on this.
Perfect. So just jumping back to our presentation here, like we said, we'll go just to wrap up our case study. We had our $150,000 carry forward loss. So let's include that Schedule D report. Let's include the marginal bracket report to show them where they're at, where they're likely to be. And we get our Schedule B report in there. And again, we can include and exclude whatever we want, whatever helps you have that discussion with the client. That's really just the emphasis here. And Holistaplan does a great way of highlighting those specific, those specific areas of their tax return. This is an example that we decided to include because client communication, this is step 3 of our whole process. So we've set the stage, we've done our analysis, we've created our report, and then step 3 is going to be client communication. So this is an example of a Roth conversion. email that we like to send to clients. This is just goes through everything that they need to know. So it's going to be their tax bracket, the total amount of conversion, why we think that this is a good idea, what their likely tax rate would be in the future, assuming no Roth conversions, what future RMDs could look like. So communication with the client is utterly important, and it definitely it goes a long way in just putting this out there to the client, letting them see what it is they're recommending, offering a follow-up call to discuss it in more detail if they need to be walked through it or want some more information. And again, this is a great supplement to perhaps the Roth projection tool. If this is a client that wants to see really what the value of the Roth conversion plan is over the long term.
Yeah, I got 2 questions that I want to address here.
Great.
So sample language to clients asking for the tax return, that is the tax return announcement request. I know we've covered it in other sessions, but we can make sure that we include that with the follow-up with the deck that comes out that Laura and her team send out. So that's one thing. And then we've got Eagle Eyes here. So on slide 33, it looks like there is a typo for the name Schwab. And I think that was an error in translation. And then there's a question, are we able to use the materials, client communications, et cetera? And the answer is yes. So part of what we do with Holistiplan is, we work with Holistiplan for several years now. We share all of our materials, and they are available to you to use with your clients. If you become a subscriber, there are significantly more materials that are gated content that are available to you. But yes, this is available. So I answered, I answered those questions. I think there's one other. Do you normally send via email account balances? This is all, Rob, it's all encrypted. And so, obviously it's something that the client permits us to do, but it's all encrypted. So yeah, we are security conscious here. So yeah. Good. All right, let's finish this up. We got like 5 minutes.
Perfect. So, just rounding out our 4-step process here, we always review, we always finalize, we follow up. So if clients haven't gotten back to you, we're always making sure that we're doing, what we need to do to best serve them, make sure that they've seen the email. Like I said, this past week, we've been doing some preliminary Roth conversions. And it's amazing, even just sending a second email, you get a couple of more stragglers who maybe missed the first one or, just needed a little reminder. So just make sure that you're, taking the time to keep track of who you've reached out to, who hasn't gotten back to you, who promised they'd get back to you, and just, making sure that they've seen what they need to see, having discussions that need to be had. And yeah. So here's our 4-step process. Again, we've just been trying to put a lot of these actions and projects into this framework, just to help everyone, get a sense of how we do these things, and how we hope you'll do them as well.
Good. All right. As we round out the hour, and you're welcome, Rob. I love the engagement and I love the questions. It keeps Greg and I alert. And we just want all of you to know that we're here for you, that Holistiplan is here for you. And so, we love the questions coming in. All right, bonus material. So this is really cool. The DOL at the end of last year created a retirement plan lost and found website. There's almost $2 trillion there. And so we sent out this announcement to our clients last month, basically telling them about this website, giving them a link to the website. It is like a DOL, just like Social Security, like it's a government website. They have to put in PII, but there's almost $2 trillion. And last week I was on the road giving a bunch of tax planning talks in the Midwest. I was in Kansas City, Indianapolis, and I had a slide on this and I was mentioning it, and people were coming up to me afterwards talking to me about it. Folks that have, worked for 30 or 40 years, who are retired, who never bothered to roll over that, that old account. So this could be really cool for you to be sharing with your clients. Okay, and then let's just wrap up. We do have one more question. So here's what's coming up for 2025. So next month, we're talking about efficient tax planning for every client. And this is part of how we want you to be rethinking tax planning, Holistiplan. Is in the old days, tax planning was very reactive. It was very one-off, right? Like, oh, I'm getting a divorce. What does that mean? I'm going married, filing joint to single, right? Oh, my husband died. What does that mean? Oh, I'm getting married. What does that mean to go single, married, filing joint, right? It was like very reactive, was very episodic, is what I'll call it. With technology overall, it allows us to go beyond reacting and allows us to bring these services in a much more scalable way. So next month, we're going to talk about that. And then we've got, Greg, could you answer this question? They're asking about the DOL site. So if you could put that into the chat real quick. And yes, and then the next slide is the code. So there is a 10% off code, Debbie Taylor 2025. And then the last slide is Fortune favors the bold. And I like that at the end. There's the code, Debbie Taylor 2025. And I like this. This is the first time we've used like a motocross racer guy. And so it's pretty cool. All right. So Greg, you're answering the question in the chat. And Laura is mentioning our Holistiplan Tax Summit coming up. I think it's April 22nd, but Laura's going to hop on and remind us when that is. And so with that, then, thank you to everybody. Enjoy these spring-ish days that are coming, and back to you, Laura.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Greg. Awesome webinar. Yeah, so what I wanted to just call out was we have our 4th annual tax summit happening April 22nd. I dropped the link in the chat. This is something that should definitely be on your radar. Right now, we have, I think it's 5 hours worth of content. We have 2 CE credit courses approved. We're looking to add more to that. Each year, we have thousands of advisors attend. So last year, I think we had something like 6,000 financial advisors register for the tax summit. So if it's not on your radar yet, plan to spend the day with us on April 22nd. And again, the link is in the chat, and we'll send out the link in the follow-up email. Let's see, anything else? No, I think that's it. I think we're good to go. All right. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We'll send out the recap email with a link to the slides and a link to rewatch the webinar so you didn't miss a thing. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.